I'm from Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is southeastern Tennessee. I actually live about a quarter of a mile from the Georgia-Tennessee border on Lookout Mountain, Tennessee, which is sort of a suburb of Chattanooga. My parents moved into the house that they currently live in when I was 7 months old. So I lived in the same house on Lookout Mountain all my life. My family, the Smarts specifically, have lived in Chattanooga for 5 generations and on Lookout Mountain for 4 generations. The Smarts originally came to Virginia in the mid-1600s. Then they moved down to Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, actually, and were there for several generations before moving over to Middle Tennessee in the early 1800s. When a lot of this was going on with the Indians being pushed out of eastern Tennessee and Middle Tennessee, a lot of land was made available for settlers. So both the Smarts and the Reeds moved into Middle Tennessee in the early 1800s. And James P. Smartt, who was my forebear, I don't know how many greats there would be in his great-grandfather, but James P. Smartt was able to get a railroad stop. And this was about 4 miles outside of what is now McMinnville, Tennessee, and it was called Smartt Station. And it eventually developed into Smartt, Tennessee, which is still a town today. And that's where our family reunion is held every year. Historically, Chattanooga is very unique because of its role in the Trail of Tears as well as the Civil War. Chattanooga historically is mostly known for its involvement in the Civil War, the Battle Above the Clouds, in which the Confederates occupied Lookout Mountain, which is where I'm from. There's a National Historic Park about 2 miles from my house, but the rise there is so steep that the Confederates couldn't point their cannons down far enough to hit the Union soldiers that were coming up the mountain. It's a very fascinating story, the Battle Above the Clouds. Chattanooga was known as the Dynamo of the Dixie, or the Pittsburgh of the South, in the 60s. And in 1969, it was the most polluted city in the country. After the economic hardships of the 70s and 80s, particularly for manufacturing centers in the United States, of which Chattanooga was one, Chattanooga as a city decided to remake itself. And it's actually known a lot today because of its downtown rejuvenation efforts, which started in the mid-80s when I was born. So the centerpiece of that rejuvenation was the Tennessee Aquarium, which was built in the late 80s, and I can barely remember when it was built. And since then, they've built a lot of new things down there. So actually, as evidence of the success of the downtown rejuvenation that started in the 80s and continues all the way up until today, in 2001, NPR did a series where they highlighted one great city of the world every week for a certain month. And they did 5 cities in their Great Cities of the World series, and that was London, Amsterdam, Paris, Chicago, and Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is pretty cool for a city of only 150,000 people. I had never lived anywhere other than Chattanooga, never anywhere other than the same house I grew up in until I went to college at Wake Forest. So I moved to Winston-Salem, and I've stayed here for 6 going on 7 years, as first a student, an undergraduate student at Wake Forest, and now a grad student. So really I've only lived in 2 places my entire life, except for one semester, which was in the fall of 2007. I studied abroad in Florence, Italy. I think it's hard to go to new places and experience new things without changing the way you look at things at all. And if you do, then it's probably not healthy. But I also think that people who just radically alter their perspective and deny everything they came from, I also think that's a little bit unhealthy as well. So I've heard people talk about a parallaxic view, which is a view that's offered by 2 different perspectives. That's why you have 2 eyes, because we get our sense of depth from having 2 different perspectives on things. And I think going to a new place, experiencing different cultures and stuff, even if it doesn't change your mind about everything you believed in, it helps you contextualize your life and your experiences thus far.